Morning, everybody. It's lovely to be out early on a fine morning. And thanks for the invitation to be here this morning, Suzanne and Alan. When I was reflecting on it, I graduated from university in Galway in 1979 and worked as a civil engineer, and worked up till actually 2 years ago with CISC. But I remember, and I was thinking of, say, at times clients say, the industry, unlike other industries, doesn't change, that there's no innovation, there's no developments in it. And when I was reflecting on that just ahead of this morning, and recognising now where BIM is at and where it's going, and I remember being on a site in Letterkenny probably about 1980, and you were working from a manual telephone exchange, and with the design engineers here, some bars, the code on them, our reinforcement bars, the code would be a special bar that it was just designed for a particular awkward situation. So you'd have to, I remember ringing the supplier of the rebar. There was no telex or no fax, right? So ringing the guy, and you'd say, will you go down the page 600 millimeters, go to your right 400 millimeters, go back up 200, go across 300. So when you think of, and that's, I'm only a young fella, so that's not that long ago, and when you think of, say, the advancements in it in the meantime, and it has all actually happened really in spite of it, like technology does, it actually just creeps up on you, and hopefully we all keep abreast of it and support what's positive about it. So this morning, the biggest challenge for me this morning is to make sure we all get our chance to speak and get out of here shortly after 10 o'clock. So I better make sure I keep my time then. So this morning what I was just going to do is, just for interest sake, for information, is to just give people a sense of what we're doing in the Children's Hospital at the moment. I'd say out of CIS 2 years, I've been working with Diageo, and then I was honoured last year to be asked to chair the development board for the National Children's Hospital. So it's a fantastic project, and one that I see Paul Dufresne from the HSE is here. One that we're all really excited about delivering on. So what I'm going to do this morning then, as I say, is just give you a quick update on where we're at and where we're going, and then the fact that in the design, and I know some of the people who are bidding for designs are aware of this, that BIM is specified in the design. So that people understand it, so that the National Children's Hospital is an amalgamation of 3 hospitals, which is the Children's Hospital in Temple Street, Crumlin, and Tala Hospital. And they're being amalgamated now into a new children's hospital in the St. James's campus. The challenge from this is to just have a centrepiece for an integrated healthcare system. And I suppose one of the special things of note here in this is that the Children's Hospital is almost the head franchise in a way, in the sense that it's located in St. James's Hospital. There'll be 2 satellite centres, and they were announced recently, one in James Connolly Hospital in Blanchardstown and one in Tala. But also that framework works to all the hospitals around the country as well. So it's more than just one hospital at the centre of it. It's children's healthcare for the future, really. When we, some months ago, we said, well, we need to have a vision of what we're trying to do, and it's always very difficult to capture in 5 or 6 headings what it's all about. But anytime I'm just giving a presentation like this, I look into them and say, well, in relation to what we're talking about today, is it relevant? And I mean, I think the one there that is a challenge, and that BIM does help and support, is a hospital which is cost effective from the perspective of capital costs and whole life costs. And we all expect and hope that BIM very much supports that aspiration in terms of cost effectiveness, but at the capital cost and at the construction stage, but also in the whole life costs thereafter. Just where is the site? So, I mean, mapped out there is the overall St. James's site, and in the orange is the area that's allocated for the National Children's Hospital. People will say, God, I went up to St. James' Hospital and there's no room in St. James' Hospital. The reality is that St. James' Hospital, as you see there, is overall 25 hectares, right? And in the middle of the capital city, it has only something over 1 million square feet, I think, of building on it. So it's actually, the density is tiny for the site. So there are a number of buildings, clearly, that have to be demolished within that space. But that's, whether it's a hospital or residential or retail in a capital city, that's what happens when you get densification. So even from looking at it from that point of view. But that's at this stage, we're already progressing on the whole decanting program for that site. So you'll see, one of the things that comes out clearly about that is the impact of the, in terms of transport, the Lewis line, which in essence wraps around the St. James's site at Rialto, Fatima and St. James's. Just in terms of what's in the hospital, 110,000 square metres total floor area, number of beds, and I won't go through that in any great detail. The wonderful situation we're in is that the government has allocated 650 million funding for the project, which includes 200 million from the sale of the National Lottery. So we're in a good place in terms of this stage now. If at long last a site decided on the funding in place and supported by the government, and now we're on a journey which and very important, next week our tenders are in for all the different disciplines with a view to appointing a design team early in June, submit planning. It's strategic investment, so it goes to on board Planola in February, and with a fair wind then that we'd have planning approval on or about August, and to at that stage start construction, which is enabling and demolition. And then we have a commitment that we'd begin a transfer of services from the Children's Hospital at the end of 2018, with a complete handover, fully equipped hospital at the end of 2019. So that's the timeline for it. And genuinely, given the momentum that's building up, we're very confident about it. And I think next week is very critical to it in terms of making sure we get the right team, because whatever about the technology we use in projects, it's about teams and it's about people in terms of ultimate the success of it, and that clearly the people are supported by technology, but it's about people at the end of the day. And then just in terms of BIM, and I just extracted this from the tender documentation. So the requirement is full level 2 collaborative BIM, and the expectations in out of that obviously is at a very early stage that you get, when we're looking at different options, that the BIM supports an efficient communication of the different options, and that as we know then in terms of coordinated design. And I suppose one of the big challenges in construction is the amount of waste, really. There's a huge amount of waste at design stage in terms of not clarity, first of all, I think, about a design brief, and then not proper communication between design teams. So as we know over the years, you've all have experience of this, there's a huge amount of waste in that, and then that's compounded on sites then where, particularly on a very challenging project like a hospital, where unless the whole transfer of information is streamlined, there genuinely is a huge cost of it. So sometimes people say, well, the cost of investing in BIM and in technology is huge. The reality is that, waste on site and having to redo things, it's of a scale of 100 times more than actually what the technology investment is in the beginning. And I think sometimes we forget that, because nobody ever goes around and says, we wasted this much money on a job, because what you want to do is you want to forget about your waste, really. So I think that's certainly where, in my mind, is like there's a huge opportunity for BIM, and certainly we're at the board and generally in the Children's Hospital, we're absolutely committed to the value of BIM for the project. And then obviously thereafter in terms of the whole thing of having the asset register to support your building and facilities management afterwards. So, and one other thing I'm just thinking back on is, you say when I was a young engineer, I always felt that a hospital, you hadn't gone through your apprenticeship until you had done a hospital, because like the reality is that there is a huge complexity about a hospital in terms of the number of rooms, the coordination of services, and the quality of finish that's demanded, really. And while, afterwards I'd say sometimes pharmaceutical buildings match them, the reality is the pharmaceutical buildings in terms of services certainly do, but in terms of the real complexity of hospital is the number of different rooms, the amount of equipment, and within every room there's so much different equipment. So, as I say, there's a challenge in it, but hopefully with the support of technology and good people, it'll be a very successful project.